Hey guys, D.Bowie here, and this is my ultimate support starting item guide. Well, before I start this video, I just want to, tell everyone I am streaming regularly now, be it editing videos or playing Dota. I'm doing this almost every day, so subscribe to my Twitch channel. I'm trying my hardest to answer all questions and interact with everyone, and I'm trying to make my stream a little bit more educational, so hope you guys can watch me play or whatever it is I am doing at the moment. This is probably going to be the hardest of them all to make, because there's no role in Dota more situational than support. I guess the best I can expect of this video is correctly giving you guidelines into what these supports need. I don't want to lose time here, but I need to mention one extra point. It's very hard to find support replays on YouTube. Well, that's bad because I feel like there's a lot of extra change-ups and things you should consider when playing support. The video would increase tenfold in size if I had so many replays. Take everything here with a grain of salt, but pay attention how most of the builds share a lot of similarities. You're not going to see Arbor Venom on ranged supports, you're not going to see support skipping regen. Yes, some people play greedy, but playing greedy is not buying 3 regen items and staying in lane denying creeps. They get boots and they start roaming. As a lane support, it's very rare to see boots first, and also, you never see magic stick first. Remember those details and try to learn as much as possible with everything I say here. The first hero we're going to talk about is Pudge. Almost every time we're going to learn Rot at level 1, the slow aspect of the skill is way better at allowing your team to get kills than mid-hook, and because of that a move speed item is most of the time present in Pudge's initial items. Boots if your other support is a good guy, other support, or Windlace if you need to buy additional items. Mana regen is almost always a must, but you're not going to have money for Mango most of the time, and you almost always buy clarities in support, so forget about the mangoes most of the time. And Pudge is okay with being hidden and waiting the mana regen from clarity. You walk a lot as well, so clarity is pretty nice from him, even though he is a melee hero. Finally, a tango is almost always purchased. Giving tangos to your mid is always nice, and the regen is good to heal you back after using hot during skirmishes. Eating your way to a better hook angle is also something underrated that the item provides. So until now, the 3 key aspects we discussed are move speed, mana regen, and HP regen. Let's take a look on these openers here. Miracle in this game starts with boots, smoke, tangos, clarity, and a branch, and possibly courier. This is not a normal starting item build because he has random starting gold, but we do see all the aspects I talk about with the exception of a smoke, which is also a great item on Pudge. One way we can make this build work for a normal Pudge is switching boots for Windlace. This pretty much denies all the random gold while maintaining all the key aspects I highlighted. Ana in this game starts with Windlace, Tangles, Clarities, and Dust. This means his other support has to buy Courier and hopefully all the wards. But I mean, he had the gold to buy the support items. In this game though, Dust is very effective, especially because Weavers in the early game tend to be very reckless with their Shukuchi usage, and the cooldown is pretty big, meaning you can actually lock on the Weaver, especially with Windlace, and then you can secure the kill with Rot. Talking about item timings, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a mess. Support item timings are rarely constant because the gap between how many kills and deaths you can get is the largest when you compare it to any other role. But I'm going to talk about most of the items people go for and try to be very lenient in the item timing part of it. A lot of people like to go either lens on Pudge. The increase in hook size is very powerful indeed, but a lot of people forget that Trankos and Urn can snowball the game a lot towards your team. Pudge is great at getting kills, but he's not a pusher. Urn allows your cores to keep pushing after winning fights, and Trankos allows you to have free urns to your cores since you can handle your own HP regen. As a Pudge, you really want to get as much map control as possible in the early game because you lose a lot of your godlike status mid-game onwards. Another aspect I want to highlight is that when you have Trankos, it means you can always stay in lane, providing you bring yourself clarities and stuff like that. This means that you get more experience, and experience is key on Pudge. You want to get to level 7 as fast as possible, and while Arcanes gives you more mana during fights and you can use hook more times, the constant travels back to base are something that a lot of supports usually overlook, and especially with Pudge that needs a lot of levels, I feel like Trankos is better most of the time. Let's talk about Rubik now. Some pro players sometimes roam with him, and that's fine. He's not the best roamer early on, but he can be decent if your cores have the burst potential needed to make up for your own lack of damage. Usually when you roam, you want some sort of move speed item, but in this game, since Puppy has a jungle meeple, he has to buy everything. At the same time, he has a Timbersaw in the safe lane. This means that he doesn't want to leech experience from Timbersaw. Timber is also going to be fine there. He decides to fight, roam. His starting items are 2 sets of tangles, courier, 2 clarities, 2 branches, and one observer ward. This is not the best roaming build because he doesn't have any move speed items, but he's going to make it do. Eventually, with an Invis rune, he gets first blood. The more usual roaming build is this one: boots, tangles, clarity and smoke. Still, you have to remember that this build is only possible when you don't need to buy observers and courier, and at the same time there's not an Invis hero, for instance, that you need to address. Talking about items Rubiks go for most of the time, we see arcanes being the first item bought. If you die too much or a lot of fights are happening, sometimes wand or raindrops show up in the mix as well. An important thing to mention is that around the 5 to 6 minute mark is when most supports buy the next batch of observer wards, since the first 2 of the game are expiring. Usually, if you're playing roaming Rubik, you're going to be able to afford them because of kills and assist gold. At the 10-minute mark, you're not going to have much. Arcanes and magic wand are a must. If you're getting a lot of kills earned, can also be an option. I feel like people put a lot of emphasis on Blink Dagger on Rubik, when in reality, you only need it in a handful of games. These games are mainly when your team lacks initiation, and with Centaurs, Ladder, X, and a ton of other initiators being popular, that's not the case very often. Oh, Windlace is pretty common, especially because most of the time I feel like you're going to start the game with 1 instead of boots. Ogre Magi is a natural roamer. I mean, you can put him in a safe lane, but he's way better at roaming than harassing enemy offlaners. Syndran's build in this game is pretty much a non-greedy build for roamers. He bought 1 Observer Ward and Courier and has Orb of Venom, Clarity and Tangles. The strength of Orb of Venom and Ignite in the early game is just amazing, and you can kill pretty much anyone with allies since you provide a lot of slow and tankiness. Every mid laner hates you, and clubbing him with Ignite early on is a very powerful asset that Ogre has. In this clip, not only Syndran gets 2 kills with his team without dying, but with shrines he can heal and go mid ASAP. As a roamer, Urn is always a pretty good choice. Arcanes is also decent, but if you look at his team, they do have a lot of early push and fight potential. Having HP to prepare your team to get objectives after winning fights is something important in cases like this. More important than playing mana, I would say, especially because Ogre's mana costs are not that big if you're only maxing Ignite and Bloodlust in the early game. He does go for Arcanes afterwards, and the mana regen from Raindrops and Urn does help a little bit. As I said a little bit before, 5 minutes is usually the time most pro supports buy wards. As a roamer, in a good game you should be able to afford them providing you got kills, and this game is a total stomp. Unlike the heroes we talked about, Disruptor is more of a lane support than a roamer, at least when you compare it to Ogre, Pudge and Rubik. Fly's approach to this game is probably the one that most resembles a hard support. Courier, wards, tangles, 3 clarities, TP and a smoke. He smokes right away and uses the TP to lay early observer wards. He even does a neat trick to maybe trick Nyx that he warded in another area. He gives the other ward to Ogre and comes back to the lane. As a good lane support, his job is to tank the range creep and avoid the lane to push, as well as zone Nyx. This is why he commits to 3 clarities. Disruptor, without move speed items, can't rely so much on his right clicks that won't even hurt Nyx that much anyways. His first Q is one of the strongest level 1 spells in damage, and he wants to abuse that as much as possible. In this other game, we see the same approach. He buys Couriers, 1 Sentry, 2 Observer Wards, Tangle, and again, a lot of clarities. He goes for an early Observer Ward, and this time he doesn't get spotted, even though he had no gold for smoke. Disruptor as a lane support has pretty decent means of harassing considering you use your clarity as well, and this is why you play so selfless in the early game. One thing to take away from these clips, since they are all 3 from Fly, is how he doesn't smoke as the dire support toward the Radiant spot, while he always go for the smoke when sides change. The distance from Radiant Jungle Shrine to the offlane Dire Shrine is bigger than the opposite. In this game, notice how he wards the spot that shows both camps that X can farm instead of the eye he warded in the other game. X, unlike Nyx, is much more likely to go jungle, meaning that the vision there is more relevant. Nothing too new, tons of clarities, tangle, the support life. In regards to items, Disruptor has a very costly skill set. Using all of his skills at once costs close to 400 mana, so you can't skip arcanes at all on him. He does get wards at around the 5-minute mark, and I guess one thing I didn't mention about these wards is that it's nighttime. Placing them is way easier at this stage of the game. In that game, Disruptor went 1 first. In this game against Lone Druid, he goes for Windlace instead. Being able to run away from the angry bear as well as having that extra burst of move speed to glimpse him is very important, and can sometimes pass by unnoticed. In this game, we see a very relevant change-up. He's going for this larger kill, but didn't really expect so much reaction. As he understands he's pretty much dead, he gives up on arcanes and buys 1 wand, wards, raindrops, and a TP. As a support, you have way less resources to use, and trying to save as much gold as possible is a very important skill to have. So at 10 minutes into the game, you can end up broke as fuck like Fly here, with boots, some wards, wand, and raindrops, or decently farmed, with arcanes, windlays, and a smoke. Earth Spirit is another roamer. In this particular game, Miracle went for 2 branches, Tangles, Clarity, Orb of Venom, and 1 Observer Ward. They are trying to go for a cheeky play with Darkseer and double Iron Shell. They don't get the Bounty Rune, but they deal a lot of damage to that Lone Druid. In this other game, another very greedy build. As I said before, while this type of build can yield good results, he doesn't even buy Courier, so one change-up that would allow you to roam but get Courier is getting only 1 Clarity. Like Disruptor, you spend a lot of mana playing as Earth Spirit, especially because as your levels increase, your cooldowns do the opposite. At level 6, you can spend close to 400 mana by using every one of your skills. So Arcanes is the best boost for him almost every time, at least in my opinion, especially if you're doing fine. A lot of people like to go Earn on Earth Spirit, but it's more common to see pro players going Arcane first. There are players that build Tranquils on him, and one thing to note is that Soul Ring is never built on him. Have that in mind, and I feel like people tend to go Tranquils in games that a lot of skirmishes are happening in the entire map, so not only it's risky to save up 900 mana to finish Arcanes, you also have to go back to base to heal a lot, and maybe a fight starts and you can't participate. Also, when a lot of fights are happening, you want to be participating and hopefully winning them, so you want to be full HP, and that experience is actually pretty important on Earth Spirit. He's very level dependent when you consider the amount of damage you can do. So that's why I feel some players like to go Tranquils. It's only a matter of being ready for fights always, at least if you bring some clarities and stuff like that. Misery goes for a 16-minute Midas in one game as well, against an Alchemist and Slark lineup. There are a lot of different change-ups. Midas usually means you want to go Eggs, or it means that you're against one type of hero that won't allow you to get kills or experience. Slark is one of these heroes. Heroes like Radiance Alchemist and Naga are also very hard to gank and to farm against, so those games tend to last a lot, and Midas allows you to keep scaling and not dying every time. So at the 10-minute mark, you can be halfway towards your Midas, you can have your Tranquils, Wand, and Raindrops, and if you're Miracle and get tons of early kills, earn Wand, Arcanes, and Raindrops. Note that this is very hard to achieve though. Most of the times, the earn will come pretty late if you went Arcanes first. Keeper of the Light is the new flavor of the month hero. Everyone picks the dude. Who doesn't like a pervy wizard? Keeper has early damage, mana sustain, heal with eggs, blinding light, a lot of good stuff. He can be playing in the offlane with another core like we see in this game. The replay starts too late, but the initial items are 2 Observer Wards, Courier, 3 Clarities, and that's pretty important, as well as Tangles and a branch. Like Disruptor, a lot of your early presence is based on Illuminate, so you should always have Mana Regen when playing him, because it will take a while until you have a lot of chakra levels. In this other game, we see Koto in the offlane again, and this time we see a greedier approach. He's against us larder, so boots are very important to deal with the fish. Most of the time we're fine, since Koto has pretty good base move speed. Here we see Jarex again, with another very frugal build. Koto farms a lot during the game, so you don't need to be so greedy most of the time. At least not until the creeps start spawning. Then you just steal all of those creeps with Illuminate. Just tell your allies you're damaging the enemy carry. In this game, we see Puppy starting with Windlays, Orbs, Courier, 1 Clarity, and Tangles. In this game, since he has a roamer, he can't be in the offlane, so he is expected to harass and annoy the offlaner. A little bit of extra move speed is pretty good in these situations, considering you're very low on HP and armor. Being able to outrun creeps when you draw aggro is something pretty underrated. We see Windlace purchase again, even though G8 is in the offlane. He's against that annoying bear, so it's pretty good to have the extra move speed against him. So basically, even if you're playing the offlane, you're going to get most of the support items because you can always farm your eggs during the game. As with items in the 10-minute mark, there's a lot of different stuff you can have. G8 goes for 4 staff in this game, so even though he didn't complete it in the 10-minute mark, he has Tranquils, Magic Wand, Windlace, and 1 component. You can cancel charge with 4 staff, and most of the time you're not going to be free to farm straight eggs against the Space Cow. Good change. In the Puppy game, he had Tranquils, Windlace, Raindrops, and almost enough gold for point booster. You're going to notice that Kotos have way more less hits at the 10-minute mark than other supports, and this is what I mean when I say you can farm up. That's also why you go for Tranquils instead of any other boots. You want to be very slippery since you have so much mana sustain with Chakra. You have pretty much the same items for Jarex in this other game, just a little bit less gold since he died a lot. With the exception of games like that G8 one where he was against a Spirit Breaker, rushing eggs after these items is almost always the best bet. The vision as well as the sustain is great, making Koto eggs one of the top 10 in the game for sure. Crystal Maiden, niche pick for some pro teams, but not a staple of this patch by any means. Most of the time this means that there's no preferred build. There are guidelines though. Crystal Maiden is one hero that can ramp up her farm in the jungle, guaranteeing mana sustain, and hopefully a lot of times kills in other lanes, having a clarity so that you can farm that large camp close to the safe lane while still having the potential of helping protect or kill someone with your carry is a must. Crystal Maiden is most definitely against an Abaddon in that lane, so rushing one and starting with those items is probably a good idea, since he will use tons of shields and harass the Crystal Maiden a lot. And maybe even Kodo is there, since Clinks is a somewhat independent hero. On the other hand, we have a very selfless build here: Courier, Observer, Sentry, Branch, Tango, and again a lot of mana regen. Kinda like Disruptor, you rely a lot on your nuke early on. People really overlook how strong Frostbite is, damage and disable wise, as well as the cooldown. Item progression wise, Tranquils are almost always the only choice Crystal Maidens have. CM is very slow and squishy, and you need to address one of those problems at least. There were initiatives to build very bulky CMs. Lesser had a video where he went crazy stuff on CM like Threads into Bracer into Ogre Club to rush either BKB or eggs afterwards. Most of the time though, it's cheaper and easier to solve her move speed problems, meaning that at the 10-minute mark you want to have Tranquils. A lot of people go Windlace on top of that. Magic Wand or Stick is very strong on her since you don't have a lot of mana, only mana regen, and during fights it's very easy to spend all your mana in seconds. Drasco goes for a Bracer in this game to deal with Clinks and the Invoker Burst. Even though I don't really like it, it kinda makes sense, especially because he goes drums. It kinda deals with her move speed, squishiness, as well as the mana problems all at once. Drums gives mana regen now, even though everyone ignores that. But I mean, I don't really like drums as an item, but I understand why he went for the item. Mid one, on the other hand, tries to go for his famous Midas. He almost always builds the item on CM. She likes levels and a reliable source of gold, since it's so easy to die with her as the game goes on, even if you're careful and you're playing well. Lion. He was the beast of the last patch and now we barely see him. What happened? Dota 3 happened. The hero is still viable, and in this game we see one of the standard support openers. 2 Observer Wards, 1 Sentry, Couriers, Tangles, Clarity, and TP. Lion isn't a great roamer, not when you compare him to heroes like Ogre, Spirit Breaker, and Earth Spirit. He can get kills, but he's very squishy. He can't make use of Orb of Venom, and he has a very expensive skill set at level 1 or 2. Even then, in this game against the Storm, he decides to take that role since he started with Boots, Tangles, Clarity, and Smoke. Storm is one of those heroes that if possible, you definitely want to gank before level 6. One big mistake I see a lot of Lion players make is trying to rush Blink with something like Naked Boots and nothing else. Blink takes a long time to farm, and without Tranquils, Windlace, and Magic Stick, not only you have to go back to base more often, it also means that you will either die in fights or leave early without helping your team as much as possible. At the 10-minute mark, ideally you want to have Tranquils and Windlace. They help you engaging and disengaging in those early fights, especially because your base move speed is garbage. The Stick is there because you don't have a lot of mana sustain early on, with only 1 or 2 points in mana drain. In this other Jerk's game, he's even more underfarmed, with only Tranquils to his name. But he does go for Windlace and Magic Stick later on before trying to get to Blink Dagger. Dazzle is the final hero we're going to talk about in this video. He's a lane support, no doubt about that. Usually you don't go for a very greedy build on him. In this replay, for instance, Puppy goes for Courier, TP, 1 Observer Ward, 1 Sentry, 2 Branches, Tangles, and Clarity. Dazzle is not that reliant on mana like Disruptor. He has decent attack animation, and the heal usually means you can trade way better. In this other one, Fly goes for an even selfless build, no branches and instead 2 observers. Arcanes is pretty much core on Dazzle. Not only he has very short cooldowns on most of his skills, take a look on how much mana he spends at level 6 if he uses all of his skills. 440. It's very important to have a lot of mana during fights with the hero, and thus it's very rare to see Tranquil Boots Dazzle. Tranquil Boots exist to either allow you to initiate easier, something Dazzle doesn't need, or to get sustained during the early game, but you have an AoE heal, so no need to get sustained with Boots. At the 10-minute mark, you should expect to have Arcanes, Wand, and maybe Raindrops. In this game, Puppy has that headdress because he wanted to go for Staff, change his mind to Mech, but I mean, you need Arcanes before going Mech on Dazzle, so he goes back to Arcane, so... I mean, just a mess. I guess he really wanted Greaves, pretty nice to dispel slow silences, and the armor is pretty decent against TA and Terror. Well, this wraps up for today. If you enjoyed this video, please guys, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see the extended version of this video, please check the link in the description. Pugna is a platform where you can learn from people like Chessie, Fogged, Monib, and get better at the game. They have now great content on the new patch, and if you want to raise your MMR, this is a great time. Just figure out the patch faster than others and get those easy wins.